Lesson 5.3, we're going to be writing equations given when we are given two different points, okay? So if you remember, in 5.1, what we did is we learned to write an equation for the slope-intercept. So I know that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. I know the two things I have to know in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form are m and b. So in 5.1, they started out by saying this is your slope, this is your y-intercept, and all we had to do was plug it in. Then we moved on to 5.2, and they said, okay, here is your slope. They gave us m, but then they did not give us b, and they gave us an ordered pair. So I knew I could have plugged it in for x and for y, and then I solved for b, okay? Now in 5.3, they're giving us something different. They're giving us two ordered pairs, okay? So if you remember, the two absolute things that we need to write an equation in slope-intercept form are the slope and the y-intercept. Well, if I look at this problem right here, it says, write an equation for the line that passes through the points. They gave us two ordered pairs. They did not give us the slope, and they did not give us the y-intercept. So I need to figure out, okay, how can I find these things out? Well, I remember, okay, back in the last chapter, we learned how to find the slope by given two, or we learned how to find the slope when we were given two ordered pairs. So if I remember, this is x and y, x1, y1. This is x2, y2. And I know the formula for slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I can plug this in and I can solve and find my slope. So let's do that. y2 is negative 4 minus 6 over x2, which is 3, minus 1. Okay, I've got negative 10 because same signs add and keep. 3 minus 1 is 2. And I know my slope is going to be negative 5. So I know m is equal to negative 5. And I've got part of what I need, but I don't have all of what I need. So what I need to do is I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do in order to find b? Well, I could do exactly what we did last time. Use my slope and one of these 2 points. Guess what? It doesn't matter which one. You will get the exact same y-intercept if you used either one. So let's try that. I know my equation is y equals mx plus b. So I plug in m, and I'm going to plug in an x and y. I'm going to use 1 and 6 since they're my first points. So I plug in 6 for y, negative 5 for m, 1 for x, and then b. So I get 6 is equal to negative 5 plus b. I add 5 to both sides, and I get b is equal to 11. So remember, the two things I have to have in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form are m and b. Now I have both of those things, and I could plug it in. Y equals negative 5x plus 11. Okay? Like I said, if you wanted to use 3, negative 4 and plug in negative 4 here and 3, you would still get the exact same answer. Okay, you would still get that b is 11. It would just use different points. All right? So let's do the next one of these. Okay, I'm going to erase the one up top. This is the one that we just did. Give ourselves some room to work. All right, so they've given us the 2 points, negative 3, 1, and 5, 5. I know I need a slope. I know I need a y-intercept. The first thing I've got to find is the slope. So I'm going to write m equals y2 minus y1. So I'm going to label these really quick. x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to have 5 minus 1 over 5 minus negative 3. I see I need to go ahead and change this to a positive. 5 minus 1 is 4. 5 plus 3 is 8. Simplify this down to 1/2. So I know what my m is. Now I've got to find b. So let's use the point negative 3, 1. Or we could use 5, 5. Actually, let's use 5, 5, okay? So I'm going to plug in 5 is equal to 1/2 times 5 plus b. So 5 equals 1/2 times 5 is 5 over 2. I'm just going to leave it as a improper fraction. So then I subtract 5 over 2 from both sides. And I realize, okay, I need a common denominator. This is where your calculator comes in handy. Okay, you're going to do 5 over 1 minus 5 over 2. So basically I say, okay, I need a common denominator. Again, you can plug this in your calculator. It will do all the work for you. 10 minus 5 is 5 over 2. So I know that that is what is equal to b. All right? So now I have my b, which is really 2.5, and I have my m, which is 1/2, and I can write my equation. So I have y equals 1/2 x plus, I'm going to write it as a mixed number now, 2.5. It's exactly how you would find your equation when you're given 2 points. So first thing you need to do is you need to find m. So I use my slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then once I find that, I use a point, plug it back into the slope-intercept form, and find b. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at perpendicular lines. We've already talked about parallel lines in the last in the last chapter, or the last lesson. Parallel lines have the same slope. So perpendicular lines, okay, parallel lines look like this. They'll go side by side and they'll never touch. But perpendicular lines will cross one another. That's what makes them perpendicular. So I know, okay, perpendicular lines have an opposite reciprocal slope. There's two things that's different about them. So if one slope, let's say, is 2, the slope for a perpendicular line would be, okay, I'd have to say, all right, what's the reciprocal of 2? Well, let's write it as a fraction, so I know it's 1/2, and then it's going to be the opposite. So if it's positive, I make it a negative. If it was negative, I'd make it a positive. So I know these lines are going to be perpendicular because they're opposites. One's positive, one's negative, and they are reciprocals, 2 over 1 and 1 over 2. Okay, so they've given us this example right here. Y is equal to 3x plus 9. First of all, in order to find out what my, to find out what a perpendicular line would be, I have to know what the slope is. So let's find, what is the slope of this equation? M is equal to 3. Okay? So I know that this is my slope here. So m is equal to 3 is my slope, so I need to find the opposite. Well, I know that this is positive, so I know my slope is going to now be negative. And let's do the reciprocal. What's the reciprocal over 3? Well, let's make it as a fraction so I can see it easy. Okay, the reciprocal is 1/3. So that's how I would find the slope for a perpendicular line. Okay, so let's do the next type of problem. They want us to say, are the lines perpendicular? So I've got to look at my slope. What's the slope of this first line? 5. What's the slope of the second line? 1/5. Okay, ask yourself the two questions. Are they opposite, and is it a reciprocal? Are they opposite? This is positive, and this is positive. So no, these lines are not perpendicular because they're not even opposites. Now, they are reciprocals of one another, but they have to be both opposite reciprocals in order to be a perpendicular line. So let's look at this next one. I have m is equal to 2 over 3, and m is equal to negative 3 over 2. So are they perpendicular? Are they opposite? This one's positive, this one's negative, so yep. And then are they reciprocals? 2 over 3, 3 over 2. So I know, yes, these lines are in fact perpendicular. Okay, so in order to solve an equation, make an equation in slope-intercept form, I have to know an m and a b. And if I've been given 2 points, I can use the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I would solve there. Okay, find m, then use one of the points to plug back in to find b, and then I can write my equation. I know perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes, so that's how I can tell yes, they are perpendicular or no, they're not. And that's exactly what you would do for lesson 5.3.